So we've just been in the other room here next door, and we've gotten some secrets out of Funcom. A lot, I think. Quite an extensive presentation, and people are right now playing the game in the other room, getting their hands on the game. And could you just give us a little bit of an outlook of what stuff you revealed here today?
Well, today we've shown the Dragon startup experience. That's the last of the 3 secret societies that we revealed before. We showed Illuminati in New York and Templars in London. The Dragon, of course, started off in Seoul, and as a member of the Dragon, you're led into this strange, mysterious neighborhood in Seoul where you follow this little girl around in order to find your way to where the Dragon wants you to go. And that event concludes with you being sent through some strange and mysterious means to a sequence we call Tokyo Flashback that shows you one of the instigating events of the storyline in the Secret World. We've also shown character creation for the first time, along with the lore and achievement UIs. Lore and achievement are ways for us to sort of tell this story, the jigsaw puzzle story in the Secret World. We treat our story like like a huge jigsaw puzzle where all these little pieces are spread out all over the world, and before we've shown how they pop up in cinematics or in gameplay and in exploring the world, and now we show how they are unlocked through achievements and through lore that actually gives you pieces of the story from this mysterious voice that you piece together. And as you piece it together, you get rewards like XP and clothing and other things that you can help advance your character. So it's a lot of really cool new features, and of course crafting, or transcribing as we call it, is one of the coolest, where players are able to really make the kind of break down the items they get, be it weapons or talismans and things like that, break it into their core components and then rebuild them to be what they want them to be, and then add extra stats to them and things like that. It's a very sort of powerful and flexible crafting system that I think is going to make a lot of people very excited. And then finally we showed one of our dungeons that we haven't revealed yet, Darkness War, where players join Vikings and Wabanaki Native Americans to fight the Mayans in 1,000 years in the past. So it's a lot of variety to what we're showing here today. It's been really cool.
It's been a roller coaster ride, really. There are lots of questions that pop into my mind right when you talk about this, but let's start with the story first, because I think the system that you built to tell the story is really complex. And how do you deal with players who tackle these things differently? I mean, some players are going to want to have all the lore, all the achievements, want to read everything and get that. But at the same time, you're going to have players who may not be into that and just want, an overarching story and the main things. And how do you balance that and make sure that everyone gets a good experience?
It really is up to the player to play the way you want to play. You can enjoy the game without digging into all the lore and into all sort of the depth of the story. I mean, everybody in the game is on a story mission. And you can choose to, ignore it, but most people will play it, and that will sort of bring you at least through the highlights of the story and just really confront you with the main themes of the story. But, exploration, talking to characters through incidental dialogue system, gathering all these lore achievements really allows you to dig deeper into it. And that's, it's for those people who want to do that, and it adds a lot of longevity to the game. Playing through it, sort of gaining all these abilities, building different decks for your character, doing all this, like the story mission, the normal missions, the dungeons, and the PvP will, get you some of the way towards sort of completing this part of this jigsaw puzzle. But in order to really sort of see what the depth there is there, you have to go out and you have to spend a lot more time exploring. You have to look around, you have to be observant. You really have to dig into it in order to get the full breadth and depth of the story.
Because I think what we've gotten before from the Secret World is that it basically encompasses everything, every myth, everything
is true.
Yeah, everything is true. But I think what we got to peek on today is what ties it all together as well, the filth and all of that.
Yeah.
And is that a correct assessment?
Definitely. I mean, we've always talked about before how we have sort of this vast scope of the story. It goes back millions of years and brings all these mythologies together, but it's tied together with this idea of what we showed here today, something called the filth, which is this mysterious force and this sort of this rift in time and space that you see both in the Tokyo Flashback sequence and at the end of the Darkness War. And that is something that returns throughout the game. game and that you learn more and more about. There are things we're not going to reveal at all before launch, that we're going to let players explore and sort of reveal on their own, and that also is going to tie everything together very tightly. But at the end of the launch content, you're still going to be left with a lot of mysteries that we're going to carry on in the years to come.
If we move on to the mechanics more, I think we've seen the skill wheel before. We know how that works, but I think what's important to look at is the crafting and how that actually works. Pretty much along the same sort of philosophies, that you can build your own sort of thing, and you're always free, and you're not tied down by sort of recipes or things like that, but instead you can freely craft stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, it's the whole philosophy of the game. So, this is a game that doesn't require you to create alts or anything like that. You can play one character and you can change the way you play it. We showed today the gear manager that allows you to, in the middle of Egypt, to basically change from being a single target DPS to a AoE DPS or a tank or whatever you want to be, and that is the game expands with you as you learn more abilities. The game allows you to basically combine those abilities into new decks, into new builds, and that goes for crafting as well. You don't need any crafting skills, you don't need any recipes. You learn by observation. You break a hammer down into its core components, and you're able to see how a hammer is made, and then you can add to that to make that hammer more versatile and useful for you. So it is really a game that we've always said, like, this is the game that lets you play any way you want to play, and people have always been like, yeah, well, right, everybody says that, but I think it is obvious that we are that game, and players are going to have the flexibility and the options available to them.
I think the one thing that makes me almost my mind boggles when I think about it is the fact that you can change on the fly like that and totally redo everything, because I think the traditional way of playing an MMO is specializing and getting very good at your role. And in this game you really don't have you really have to sort of think much broader than that.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you don't have to in the beginning. I mean, when I play the game, I specialize a lot because I enjoy that. I like my shotgun, assault rifle, pistols. I'm a gun guy. So I like playing like that, and I like to specialize. But the option is there, and the incentive is there to then quickly try to combinations of things. Maybe the pistols work well with elemental magic, for example, or maybe blood magic and swords go well together. And you start experimenting, and you start coming up with these interesting builds. I mean, just last night you were setting up here, prepping the preparations, and the guy sitting next to me, he was like, "Oh, I just made this new build, this new deck, which is really awesome. I combine this and this and this in order to do that and that and that, and that changes the whole way you play it." So it's fascinating how much it sort of creates this feeling of wanting to explore and dig deeper into it. But if you want to focus, or if you want to be handheld through it, we have tools to do that as well. We have what we called template decks that basically shows you how to create a deck or a build that is pretty good, and that gives you a cool outfit as a reward for doing that. So I mean, you don't have to, you're not sort of left sort of without any guidance whatsoever. If you want to be handheld, that option is there.
But another thing that it does is the flexibility of the group. You don't have to look for specific roles. Instead, you can just adapt yourself to the players that you're currently playing with.
Absolutely. In dungeons, it's a great advantage to be able to switch on the fly between different builds, because there's always enough DPS guys, but healers, tanks might be hard to come by, and if you have a group dynamic with a bunch of people who are DPS, then suddenly that probably one of those guys has some tanking abilities, or might have a full healing deck, and be able to switch that and really allow for you to do the dungeon without having to go looking for other people to join, and that's fantastic. That flexibility is great.
And it comes together in June. You finally announced the official release date. Yeah,
June 19th. Everybody will be able to play the game for themselves, and I think it's going to be really exciting. I mean, the game looks great, and we're spending time now polishing and fixing the last bugs and making sure the experience is as cool and fun as possible.
And of course, preparing whatever happens after launch. Do you have a roadmap set out, or are you just focused on getting the launch done right now?
We're of course focusing a lot on launch, but we already started working on content that's going to be post-launch. We already started to map out all the story, for example, that's going to go on, and all the features and additional gameplay mechanics and new weapons and things that are also planning on releasing sometime after launch. So we'll probably talk more about that sometime in the future, but there's great stuff in store.